and welcome to Dialogue Options. My name is Ellen and I'm joined today by Heather.
Hello.
And by Ben.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about the importance of music in video games. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. I'm very excited about this subject.
Yeah,
as
same.
it happens. When you suggested it, I was like, finally we can talk about this.
Some music.
Because when I was thinking about it after we decided we were going to do this, and when I think about some of my absolute favourite moments of video games, a lot of that hangs on the music that was playing during them, and that's kind of what solidifies them as like top tier moments. So it's nice to be able to chat about it with some enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Heather, you're always plugged in listening to music
always.
in the office, soundtracks in the office.
I love some of my favourite music to listen to when I'm working is from games. So it plays a big part in my writing too, just because I'm always tapping away to it.
Though I guess if you've got like quite an intense soundtrack going on, you might be like,
It makes everything more epic.
Some really aggressive hot takes in some of the features you write.
Where did this come from?
There's a spike in aggression.
This doesn't seem like me.
He's talking about the Animal Crossing trailer there. It's going in on
Listen
Tom
to
Nook.
the Doom soundtrack.
Yeah. I guess we'll start with, are there any game scores or game soundtracks that you guys listen to outside of the game or like listen to obsessively since playing the game?
I mean, I'm glad you sort of brought up as well like the difference between like scores and soundtracks, because I know, as you were just saying there, like if you're listening to something like Doom, that's very much like tailored for the game, whereas for me, like one of the things I listen to relatively regularly outside of the game is the old Tony Hawk soundtracks. Like I discovered a lot of sort of like punk bands who I really love from those sorts of games, the likes of the Dead Kennedys, Alkaline Trio, Bad Religion, and that just sort of came from like that sort of style of music felt very sort of like appropriate to like Tony Hawk's, only because like skating culture in and of itself, but there was something in the way you played those games, like slowly falling into a rhythm, like getting used to like kick flipping, then going into a grind, then going into like a bowl, and like it just felt right with that really fast.
You're skating.
Listen, can I talk to you about ollieing today?
Ollie's like the only move I know, so.
But it's that sort of thing where like that sort of like really fast tempo music, but it's still like quite major key.
I always think of Life is Strange soundtrack, just because it kind of got me into Foals and tons of little indie bands, and it was when I was going through like a tough time as well, so that soundtrack kind of helped me through some bumps in the road, so I always hold it very fondly. And it's just some great tracks that I think it's great that it could kind of give exposure to smaller bands in that way, so you might be introduced to music that you maybe hadn't heard before through a game.
Life is Strange, their music feels so like delicately picked, you know what I mean? Like hand chosen, each one that can work in the context of the game but can also just be a really bloody great album outside of it. And I like, my choice would be Life is Strange too, for the same reason that there's some artists I had heard of before, like I love First Aid Kit and I love Local Natives and I like Bat for Lashes, but then there were some bands I'd never heard of and some music that a song that I knew already, but now I've got this like frame for it.
It's been recontextualised by the game.
Yeah, like in Captain Spirit when he is listening to his mum's album, he's just like lying on her bed listening to, I think it's called Moon and Moon, the Bat for Lashes song. And now I feel like I have this like higher sense of sort of whimsy when I listen to it. I'm always listening to it looking out a train window being like, I feel just like he did when he was listening to his mum's track. And yeah, that's definitely my choice, is Life is Strange 2, because it works so well in the game but also works out of the game.
Yes, I think they've done really well to pick songs that also the lyrics match up to kind of what's happening sometimes. So now I can't listen to certain songs without being like, oh, this is just about Life is Strange. It doesn't have any other meaning anymore, it's just about the story.
We did that, didn't we? We sent a couple of tracks back and forth and we were like, when you think about this in the context of like Daniel Diaz, it really takes on a different, and you want that in any situation, don't you? You want to listen to a song and the lyrics, whether you can apply that to your life or an experience you've had, you like to get something more out of it. So to have that in terms of a game experience you had is like a really nice little extra.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know they picked it for a few reasons, not just, it's just a nice tune, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's fine too, if that is the case. You don't need to listen to it and be like, what does this say about Tony Hawk? This particular ditty.
What is the skater condition?
Yeah, I think Tony Hawk's going through a bad time because this song really
But I mean, even then though, like there are certain soundtracks though, in terms of I'd say like Burnout 3 Takedown, where it's just the music's really cool.
Yeah.
Like you've got the Future Heads, you've got Funeral for a Friend. I wasn't in Takedown, but you had We Are Scientists, The Great Escape in Burnout Legends.
That's a great song.
We Are Scientists.
Great song.
Yeah.
Works fantastically in the game. And sometimes it is like, as you said, like it's great when you have music that works and that like it feeds into the deeper themes of a story. It's also great when you just have a big old tune.
Yeah.
Right, give me Block Party's Banquet in Life is Strange as well. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Obviously you have games that are set to scores and you have games that are set to soundtracks, but the music in GTA feels like it doesn't quite fit either because you have the choice of listening to this whole host of different radio stations. It's not like you would get the same experience that I would. Like I said to you earlier, that I always listen to the country stations on every GTA game. So like in the 5th one it was Rebel Radio and Heroes, which great selection of tracks. So it's a hard one to say that game's necessarily enhanced by its music because you might go around listening to a different radio station to me, if that makes sense.
No, it's sort of a weird thing where I kind of agree and disagree with you here, because I think like you completely make the right point. Like everybody has their own sort of experiences with GTA soundtracks. Like, you know, for me it was the Brooklyn and Indie station in GTA 4, and I remember I had LCD Sound System, Lasavi Fav, like all these like really great artists, which sort of gave that like a really scuzzy feel to the game.
Would you pick station based on what you think the character would listen to, or what you think the moment demands? You listen to
yeah, I want to.
That's one thing, is that with GTA 5 you obviously play as 3 different characters, and then they're 3 very different characters, and it felt weird listening to my country tracks when I wasn't Michael, because the only one I think could, maybe because he loves old films, I feel like it would kind of make sense for his character to listen to a little bit of Willie Nelson, whereas if I'm driving as Franklin, probably not.
So you kind of role play through the music you
Kind
choose.
of, but then I have said in the past that I like to purposely dress them in ridiculous clothes that they wouldn't wear. So I'm not like there's no hard and fast rule. I don't respect the character in certain ways, but I'm like, wouldn't listen to Willie Nelson, would you, Franklin?
I mean, like Rockstar. I mean, I think to be fair, when you talk about music in games, like Rockstar have like a massive like sort of pedigree for it, and I think that is down to the fact like the Houses, if I remember correctly, did have a career in the music industry before moving into games. But all of their sort of games have like an interesting relationship with music. Obviously we talked about GTA's. I think another one that I kind of hold close to my heart is Max Payne 3 and House soundtrack to that, which is really propulsive, almost abrasive in a way, but again, like the character, it's sort of like it's this perfect melding of like tones, where like you've got a character who always talks in like sort of tortured noir metaphors, but the music itself, like when you're going through shootouts, it's really fast and aggressive when it needs to be, and sometimes like quite melancholic, but not in a sort of like a ballady or syrupy type way. Very sort of like, you know, all these like mashings of sounds together, which is like half the band anyway. But then obviously you move on from that to Red Dead, which again, like, you know, you can't have a soundtrack in Red Dead.
No, you can't ride your horse and flick to
you're
radio.
not flicking his ear and it's like whistling different tunes for you. Although Red Dead 3.
I think the radio stations in games, so the ones that come to mind obviously is like Vice City, GTA, and I also think Saints Row the 3rd and Saints Row 4 also, they had like radio stations in those games. It's like you do a lot of travelling in those games, going from A to B, and it just adds so much more fun to it, because you're always driving around in Vice City, and like getting into 80s music thanks to that game was such a huge reason why I hold it so fondly in my heart. So
I mean, without wanting to sort of bulldoze into another point, in terms of
bulldoze away, my friend.
In terms of, but when you mention like traveling through games there, like I think one of the most distinctive moments for me in any game is the Mexico crossing in the original Red Dead Redemption, where, you know, you've had the soundtrack, the score playing in the background, and you cross over this river, and all of a sudden like this very like sort of faint guitar starts to pick up, and it slowly rises into the mix, and then you start to hear Jose Gonzalez's voice like sort of like almost float through the air as you like trot over to Mexico. And it's just one of those like very powerful moments where, because you hadn't heard any music like that in the game to that point, it really like highlighted the importance. It felt like a real moment. And then I went into a tree and the song stopped and I got very sad because I felt like I ruined that moment for myself.
No.
Can I shock you? Because I would say kind of the Red Dead 2 equivalent of that, which is, I'm pretty sure it's chapter 5, so it's like the penultimate chapter of the game, where you, without spoiling anything, you get back from something where a lot of things have gone wrong and you don't have your horse, so you have to steal a horse and ride to camp. And then D'Angelo comes on and it's just like, again, I think it's partly because it's not a game that has recognisable songs written by artists. It's mostly scored, if there is music at all. So having that, like hearing D'Angelo's voice suddenly come in, goosebumps even like thinking about it. It's like I was saying at the beginning, some of my favourite gaming moments are because of the music. That is like top 3, if not my favourite gaming moment, because of the combination of the music and the situation, because a lot has gone down, and to have this moment where, and the lyrics of the song about him standing unshaken and he's about to go and confront someone, it's just great. It's just great.
It's kind of like from the sort of highlighting a pivotal shift either in tone or in just location of like what's about to happen. So I remember like going to Mexico for the first time and the first Red Dead, and it was like, wow, this is not even over yet. There's so much more to this game yet to come. And yeah, it was just such an amazing way of making you pause for a moment and really think, wow, everything I've been through in these games and what's to come next, it kind of gives me goosebumps.
But then touching on you mentioning music sort of as a like tonal shift or like a change in place or time, I do always love when game scores use music to like alert you of danger and stuff. So like I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn at the moment, and it's really good at, because obviously a lot of that is about stealth and going undetected, but when a robot sees you,
Robodino.
Yeah, when a Robodino sees you, they're quite good at the music changing, because sometimes you'll have these moments where you're running through I'm trying to think, like Meridian, and the music's quite nice and sweet, and you're like, oh, this just all fits so nicely.
You're safe.
Yeah,
like, you know.
And then you hear the change of music, you think, I didn't even know I was in danger yet. Like, what should I be looking out for?
Obviously, the classic example here is Metal Gear Solid.
I always thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, well, I was sitting there and I'm like, I can't wait to say it. But that dun dun, and then all of a sudden, it's like literally now, if I heard that sound, like if that came on in the room, I would just be like,
high alert. I'd get like heart palpitations.
Yeah, the old Fitbit starts like racking up the heart rate.
It's kind of similar in Fallout, actually. Every time you go into a new building or a new underground location, for example, or a cave, you hear music that kind of alerts you to, okay, there's enemies here. And then once you find the final part that you can go in that location, there's a kind of a music beat that tells you you've discovered everything in this place. And then the music will also change when you've killed everyone or everything in that place. So it's a really cool way of being like, you start picking up on it. You're like, okay, I've done everything I can here. I'm going to move on.
Obviously, like, this is all sort of like good game design. Like, you know, you're sort of telling the player through like subtle cues about what to expect. But I think the thing that elevates certain sort of stings and scores in that regard is the fact, like, the ones that are memorable outside of the game itself. Like, you know, obviously, Final Fantasy VII's victory theme, like that whole. Well, no, sorry, all the Final Fantasy's victory theme. Like, I think even if, like, as somebody who has played like about half of 9 and like little snippets here, even I can go da 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 da. Like,
oh, that was nice. So that is the end of part 1 of this discussion. Next week is part 2, where we chat about more gaming soundtracks and we choose a single soundtrack to keep, thus banishing every other game score and soundtrack from existence. It's heavy stuff. Let us know what you thought of the offerings we've discussed so far, pop your favourite game scores and soundtracks in the comments below, and come back next week.